Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. Here with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, Garrett? Trade deadline. Can't stop thinking about it. Probably refreshed my Twitter like a million times today. 14 minutes ago, the trade deadline has officially happened. But some late stragglers to the party. There are Woj dropping some bombs, 215, 215, 218, 318, wherever you are, East Coast, Central Time, all that stuff. So I'm sure there'll still be some trades coming in, but one of the most exciting days in the NBA season, so super excited. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, and like you said, we had a lot of deals coming in at the last minute. We have one big deal that we're still trying to learn the details on. We'll probably get to that later in the show. But before we get into all this trade nonsense, we do have two things to touch on to start the show. The first one is Elgin Baylor, who he's probably he's like 10-time All-NBA first team player. He was arguably one of the greatest scorers of the 1960s, and he's what most people would say is probably like a top 25 player of all time. What do you think of the sad news of his passing over the past week?
Yeah, the most underrated players of all time. When you think about the evolution of the game, it's much harder for somebody that's playing back in the day to invent these new moves and to kind of innovate the game. Like, for example, LeBron can watch Jordan and do that Jordan did and implement those into his game. Jordan was able to watch the people in the era before him. But Baylor, one of those initial era, he was really the archetype of a lot of these moves we see. And so some would call him the foundation of these moves, some would call him the professor, whatever you want to call it. He was the one that really is the reason that we see these advanced moves today, that we see the evolution of his early signature move. And so truly sad day in the NBA community, but a super underrated player as well.
Yeah, I'll just, to touch on one little thing here, like a little timeline. Most of the players today, they might look up to players like Kobe, and those players looked up to Jordan, who looked up to Julius Erving, who said himself he looked up to Elgin Baylor, and then where does it go from there? Because, he was pretty much like the first guy to do a lot of this stuff that you see all these other greats, carry on. And, perfect thing is to look at like what Kobe said in The Last Dance, where he was the only one physically there to win those 5 championships, but he's like, I don't win them without Jordan. So what you look at is like the person that's inspiring all these other people. I can't win without him, and it all traces back to pretty much Elgin Baylor. So that's what makes it extremely sad, and his legacy will definitely live on, though. I think we can both agree on that.
Absolutely, perfectly well said. And for you guys knowing that I keep looking down, I am refreshing Twitter. We did get some details of the Oladipo trade, and we'll hold that later in the show. But quite interesting details in this trade, so can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, and another thing that we're going to get to real quick is about news of an injury. Usually it's trade deadline day. It's just like, an injury, like really. But this is LeBron James, who is arguably the best player in the league, and is going to miss probably a month is what they say. They already don't have Anthony Davis there. And from what we've seen so far, last-minute trades could come in for the Lakers, but you haven't really seen anything for them today. What do you think of this injury, and is it a big concern?
It's a lot bigger of a concern now that Anthony Davis is out. Yeah, if this happened and Anthony Davis is healthy, he could keep afloat. He could, maybe move down one spot in the playoff positioning. There's a real chance that this Lakers team just tumbles in the standings and finds themselves in the 6, 7, or the 8 hole, and has to play a play-in game maybe, get a not so great first round opponent. And then again, come playoff time, assuming both these guys are healthy, it doesn't really matter who the Lakers play because they're expected to be the favorites in the West. So it's kind of a two-folded discussion. But in terms of the regular season, I expect it quite humble. They still have players, but they're without their best players, they just don't match up with the top teams in the West. So I expect them to tumble down a bit in the standings. It'll be interesting to see how far they do. It'll be interesting to see if they able to squeak in any last-minute trades at the deadline, which we will keep everybody updated with.
Yeah, I think if they can hold on to a top six spot, they'll definitely be fine, for the playoffs. They just getting into that play-in spot is a little bit worrisome, especially if you're in the lower half of the 9 and 10. The Warriors, I don't know if they'll be able to pass them considering Curry's out and they're they have 22 losses, but of course the Grizzlies, I believe they're 21 and 20, and the Lakers are, I think, 28 and 16. So it might seem like a big difference now, but that's only like 4 games in the loss column, which is the biggest thing that matters. And if they're playing like 15 games and the Lakers are struggling to find a win, then they could see themselves down there with not much time with LeBron and AD back before they can build up their seeding. And then you're in the lower half of the play-in, and then you have to win back-to-back. Anything can happen on a given night. So being in that situation is probably the biggest concern for the Lakers with this news of LeBron's injury.
Yeah, certainly a shame. And another last-minute trade just occurred as well. And so now we'll transition to talking about some of these trades. You want to kind of give the details on it, Garrett?
Yeah, I see the trade that you're talking about. We'll get to that after the trade that we kind of hinted toward a little bit earlier. But, we're going to run through all these trades. We're only going to talk in depth about the big ones. But, just really quick, the Kings received DeLon Wright, and the Pistons received Corey Joseph and 2 second-round picks. You have a winner here in this trade?
I'm going to call it. The Pistons just couple round picks, hope that those second-round picks will do more than what DeLon Wright will. But kind of just a wishy-washy move, nothing much to talk about.
Yeah, I think probably the Pistons win as well. Getting more assets, they're both in a little bit of a bad spot, but, it is what it is. The second trade we have is the Cavaliers receive Isaiah Hartenstein and 2 second-round picks, and the Nuggets receive JaVale McGee. Do you have a winner here in this one?
I kind of think similar reading the Cavs, there was a chance that I was thinking that McGee was worth maybe 1 second-round pick and possibly a second. So to get 2 second-round picks and Hartenstein to possibly do something, Cavs knew he had no spot on it. I like that. I thought the Nets were going to go hard after McGee, but it looks like they'll just look towards the buyout market. So it's a move for both teams. The Nuggets are looking to improve their roster to get a backup 5, somebody who can play good minutes outside of Jokic. So I like it for both teams.
Yeah, I like it for both teams as well. The Nuggets, like you said, they need a backup 5, and the Cavs get probably more assets than they thought for JaVale McGee. So that's a win-win. Moving on to trade number 3, and this is probably the biggest one, or at least the first catastrophic one of the day, and that is the Chicago Bulls, our very own Chicago Bulls, receiving Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu, and the Orlando Magic receive Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr., and 2 first-round picks, which I believe are for 2021 and 2023. What are your thoughts on the Vucevic trade?
Yeah, so quick note, I know for sure the 2021 pick is top 4 lottery protected. Assuming this move pushes the Bulls into the playoffs, that protection really doesn't mean much. Listen, I thought that the Magic were going to get rid of Gordon and get rid of Fournier. I didn't see the Vooch move coming, and I certainly didn't see the Bulls being the one to go out and get him, but I like it. At a certain point, you have to bring some competitiveness to your team. I've been the biggest Wendell Carter stan out there. I've continually advocated for him, even in times that he was down, but it's gotten to a point where he's just so psychologically broken. I hate to say it, for a change of scenery, it's just needed. He still has all the tools to be a perfect modern 5. He's a rim protector. He's a decent jump shot, and he can rim run. So he has the attributes. It's just he could never put it together in Chicago. He worked with Donovan for a year, Billy Donovan. That didn't work there. So there were people saying maybe it was Jim Boylan, but clearly it wasn't Boylan either. It might just be change of scenery, and it is what it is. You don't get nowhere without trading first-round picks. So you gave up 2 first-round picks. You got some Vooch. Him and Levine will now be able to run pick and roll. When Levine's off the court, you can still stagger his minutes with Vooch so that somebody on the court is always a bucket getter. and Alfred Camino, you kind of get what's left of him. I don't know what's left of him. We're not going to see Portland Alfred Camino. We're going to see somebody that can still be sparing minutes. What's interesting to me is there's another Bulls trade that we're going to talk about later, is the logjam of minutes at the 4 and 5. So I figured once this trade was made, that Lowry has to be on his way out. I was like, okay, we're going to Lonzo Ball. But that hasn't happened. So you have Lowry, you have Vooch, you have Thad Young, Matt Will has been playing the 4. You have Alfred Camino, and you have somebody else who we're going to talk about later. That 6 bigs that all the minutes, I don't know what they do. They play Patrick Williams and Aminu at the 3. They quite possibly could. I'm not sure there's enough shooting there. So things to monitor, but those are my early takes on it.
Yeah, I think a player like Al-Farouq Aminu could very well be waived or bought out or something like that. I don't know if he's completely in the plans for this season with them. And then, like you said, and usually, I hate to refer to Max Kellerman for stuff because usually he's wrong on a lot of things. But what he always says is that about 90% of the time, the team that gets the better player in the trade wins the trade. And I only see one All-Star in this trade, and that is Nikola Vucevic, which is good news for us Bulls fans. But on the other side of things, like 2 first-round picks might seem a little bit crazy, but of course you said there's a protection on the one this year. Wendell Carter Jr., I know you've been very high on him and hoping for him to get through all the stuff, but I've come to the point this year where it's just been beyond me, and I'm kind of glad seeing him go. Probably not as glad as seeing Otto Porter Jr. go, though, who was making almost like $30 million for us. He was in the last year of his deal anyway, so I doubt he'll stay with the Magic. But overall, I think it kind of does make sense for both sides. The Bulls can make a playoff push this year, and then the Magic, getting Wendell Carter, he's not a terrible player, and I think he could actually benefit well when they have Fultz healthy and Jonathan Isaac, and then they get 2 first-round picks as well. So I think it's good for both sides.
Yeah, you get a Fultz, Markel Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, and Wendell Carter to build around. They have 3 decent draft picks up in this year. So there's at least... Listen, they were a team that fought for the seed for so long. It's best to just reset and blow it up, and that's what they did. Back to your Max Kellerman thing, when you trade a dollar bill for 4 quarters, the person that gets the dollar bill wins. Just how it goes. You can sit through, let's take the AD trade to the Lakers, right? You got Anthony Davis, the Lakers gave up whatever, 3 players. People say, well, if you add up the points from those 3 players the Lakers give up, it's less than Anthony Davis. But it doesn't work that way. There's other factors surrounding it, and that's kind of what Garrett's alluding to. That's what Max Kellerman alluding to. So I kind of wanted to explain that quickly before we move to the next trade.
Yeah, and the next trade also involves the Orlando Magic. This time with the Boston Celtics, Orlando is receiving 2 second-round picks for Evan Fournier, who's going to the Boston Celtics. Now, what do you think of this? Because the Celtics, kind of like last year, where they had a lot of perimeter players across their team, and that's kind of what they're rolling with past the deadline this year, it seems like.
Boston win for me. I thought Fournier was going to fetch more than 2 second-round picks. McGee fetched more than 2 second-round picks, and he's nothing more than 12 to 16-minute center on bench. Fournier saw that can not only close for the Celtics, but play 30 minutes a game. To get 2 second-round picks, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think this is also a W for the Boston Celtics. I think it'll be weird how they adjust the rotation. Does Marcus Smart go back to the bench like he was a lot like last year and years before? Or do they start Marcus Smart and then have Fournier come off the bench? It'll be interesting to see what they do there. But I don't know. It seems a lot like they're rolling with the same identity as last season.
Yeah. It's Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge says, well, we're a market to acquire X, Y, and Z, but we almost got them, and we didn't. It's the same story with Boston every year.
Yeah, it's kind of true. But we're not even done talking about the Orlando Magic. They pretty much owned this deadline, per se. They probably had the most big-name moves there was. they're trading Aaron Gordon to the Denver Nuggets along with Gary Clark, and they are receiving Gary Harris, R.J. Hampton, and a first-round pick. Well, I'll just say real quick. I mean, I don't know how this really will work with Aaron Gordon. Um, it'll be weird to see like how he has to adjust with Jokic and Jamal Murray because they need the ball in their hands to be effective, and so does Aaron Gordon. But Jokic is the one who's always running the offense. Sometimes offense gets a little stagnant when he's not orchestrating the offense. As for trading like Gary Harris, I was a little bit surprised on. I know that he's been injured, but it seems like that they've always believed in him, and he's always come big come playoff time. Last year when they played the Clippers and when they played the Jazz, like his job on Donovan Mitchell, Kawhi, Paul George. So that was huge. It's going to be weird to see who picks up that slack now. But what do you think of this trade?
This is another one where I'm a big fan of both sides. Just briefly touching on the Magic, you now get a backcourt of Fultz and R.J. Hampton, two young guards, two hybrid combo guards that can play off the ball, can pound the ball. So on top of your Fultz, Isaac, Carter, now add Hampton to that, four really young players. I like Gordon pick up a lot. Millsap is good, but he's getting older. JaMychal Green is good, but he's getting older. You bolster some athleticism. Think about the athleticism that you can surround Jokic with. You have Jamal Murray. You can play Barton at the 2, MPJ at the 3, Gordon at the 4. That freakish athletic lineup. That's what you need to surround Jokic with. So I like that. Gordon's somebody that you have a lot of switchability on your perimeter defensively. If you play Barton at the 2, MPJ at the 3, and Gordon at the 4, you can theoretically switch 2 through 4, which I think is huge. Millsap's a good defender, but he's getting older. Like, it's harder for him to stay in front of the young, more athletic player. So I think you bolster your athleticism. It allows you for more flexibility on defense. Gordon's a better offensive player at this point. He's somebody that we've been talking about for years that he needs to get traded. That just scenery. Oh, he can do this, he can do that. I think it's great a team like Denver finally put the chips and said, let's go out and get him. Because Gary Harris, you're right, he's been injured. And I had high hopes for Gary Harris too, but you can only have high hopes for somebody strong before you just realize that you either need to change scenery or they're just not who you thought they were. Wendell Carter. And so I'm totally for this move. He didn't have to give up Zeke and Najee to get in, who's looked good. R.J. Hampton was a higher draft, but he was behind the pecking order of at least MPJ and Murray. So I'm aware of it. I don't know.
It's funny that you alluded back to Wendell Carter because I was going to say that when you were finished speaking. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that if it all works out, I think that this trade could have a lot of benefits on both sides. But I don't know. I'm a little skeptical right now with the Denver Nuggets and the Aaron Gordon fit. Moving on to the next trade, though, we won't touch much on this one, but it is with our Bulls, who received Troy Brown Jr. and Mo Wagner, and the Wizards received Chandler Hutchinson and my guy Daniel Gafford. And then I will say real quick that the Bulls are moving Mo Wagner to Boston for Daniel Tice. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yes. So at first I was a little confused with the Hutch and Gafford flip for Brown Wagner, but now understanding that they did turn Hutch and Gafford into Tice and Troy Brown is something I'm ecstatic about. I've liked Gafford's energy off the bench. I think he's a good 10 to 12 minute backup center off the bench. But let's just talk about Hutch into Troy Brown. Hutch was never going to do anything offensively. He looked okay in some stints he got. Troy Brown can shoot the ball. He's good off the bench. Kind of just gives you another scorer. Tice, yeah, he's coming up on an expiring contract, but I think he could provide value to this team. Getting rid of Gafford, you're getting rid of a shot blocker. Getting rid of Wendell Carter, you're getting rid of a rim protector. You get that back in Daniel Tice. Gives the Bulls a lot of flexibility as to where they choose to get their closing line. You figure it's Levine. You figure it's Vooch. You can mix and match any of those other parts to get to your closing lineup. Do you want to play Lowry at the 4? Do you want to play Patrick Williams at the 4? Play Thad at the 4? Do you want to play Tice at the 4? There's just so much flexibility that Donovan has to work with that I like the move. Before you give your thoughts on it, there are still rumblings that Jeff Teague may be involved in the trade, that Javonte Green may be involved in the trade. Possibly a third team as well. So we're not sure exactly where the rest of the people are going to shake out, but once that news comes in, we'll keep you guys updated.
Well, as an anti-Jeff Green guy here, I just don't like Jeff Green. Or not Jeff Green, Jeff Teague, my bad. But yeah, as an anti-Jeff Teague guy here, I don't even want to get into the thoughts of that. But like with what we have here, with Troy Brown Jr. and Chandler Hutchison, in that swap, I feel like the Bulls win a lot. I think Troy Brown Jr. is kind of underrated, and he's more dependable and he's more versatile, arguably, than Chandler Hutchison. You know, Hutchison, I feel like he had a lot of high potential when we drafted him, but you know, sometimes, like you said with Wendell Carter, like you kind of have to cut ties eventually when players are in and out for so long. And I think with Troy Brown Jr. Will upgrade in that department. And then turning Mo Wagner, at first getting him, I was a little skeptical. Turning him for Daniel Tice is a big W for us. But, you know, he plays a lot like Daniel Gafford, who we did let go, who I'm going to miss. I mean, he was one of my favorite players on the team. So that just didn't sit right with me for a little bit. It still doesn't really sit right. But that's kind of just my thoughts summarized on the trade.
So, to get back on that Jeff Teague was sent to the Magic along with 2 second-round picks to complete the Fournier trade. So, the Celtics got Fournier for 4 second-round picks in Jeff Teague. Teague will be bought out by the Magic. So, looking back at that, 4 second-rounds for Fournier is a bit. The Celtics maneuver these players getting rid of Tice is to keep them under the tax, which seems quite odd because Boston is Boston. Should be able to absorb that. So I'm not sure. I'm still looking to see where Javonte Green is headed, if he's part of it or not. But I found that to be interesting as well. I just wanted to get that out there.
All I'm going to say is I'm glad Jeff Teague is not on the Bulls. But we're gonna move on to the next trade. We're not really going to talk too much about this one. The Kings received Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. The Miami Heat get Nemanja Bjelica. Do you have a winner here?
If I have to pick one, the Heat, you got better value in Bjelica. Harkless isn't doing anything. Chris Silva wasn't getting any minutes. In terms of the Kings, I'd take a flyer and see if anything sticks, but just a small money trade.
Yeah, I think the Heat probably get the better end of this deal as well. On to the next trade, though, with a 3-team trade, actually. I believe it might have been the only one. I think it was the only one for the day. The 76ers received George Hill and Ignas Brizdeikis. The New York Knicks get Terrence Ferguson, and then the Oklahoma City Thunder get Tony Bradley, Austin Rivers, and 2 second-round picks. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I really thought that Philly was going to come away with Kyle Lowry today, but it didn't. I thought that George Hill was the cheap alternative to get a point guard for a playoff contender, so I like that. I mean, we've seen this happen how many times now? George Hill on the Cavs in, what year would that have been? 17, I think, maybe? On the LeBron Cavs. George Hill on the Bucks, Giannis Bucks, and now George Hill on the 6th team. He's a point guard that just gets traded around the contenders. I don't know. I feel like the Sixers should have pushed the chips in and went out and gotten Kyle Lowry, but they settled for George Hill instead.
Yeah, and it's not like George Hill's a bad player. Like, I believe last year he led the league in three-point percentage. So he could definitely help out Philadelphia. Yeah, I know they wanted Kyle Lowry, but getting George Hill is not bad as well. The Knicks get a nice young player in Terrence Ferguson, and the Thunder get more draft picks. So I think they have like 34 draft picks projected over the next 7 drafts, which that's just insane. I mean, like, come on. But, I mean, we're going to move on to the next trade. This one we're going to dive into a little bit. It's between the Portland Trailblazers and the Toronto Raptors. The Blazers receive Norman Powell, and the Toronto Raptors get Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. What did you think of this trade?
None where I like it for both teams. Powell, so Gary Trent looked very good when he was getting 35 minutes a game and he was the second option. But that's not who he is. He can't create his own shot. Norman Powell is super athletic, good going downhill, a freak athlete, so he has defensive capability. I mean, Hood's just been injured so much. Right? He's always injured. Every time the Trailblazers need him. So they're paying more for Norm, but I think they're getting the better players. So lucky for both teams.
Yeah, I think.
And there is some big news coming in right now.
Oh, there's big news. Well, I'm gonna have to switch over to Twitter, but yeah, I think with Rodney Hood, I mean, he's been having a little bit of an underwhelming season per se. So losing him doesn't hurt too much. Of course, Gary Trent Jr. That one might sting for Blazers fans because he was playing so well with C.J. McCollum out. But getting a guy like Norman Powell back, Norman Powell is probably a tier above Gary Trent Jr. And, he does a lot. He's still a great defender. He's pretty athletic, and he'll probably take pressure off of one of Covington or Derrick Jones Jr., because some of those two guys have been a little bit up and down throughout the whole season, and Norman Powell's a pretty consistent player. So I kind of like it for both sides. It does feel weird seeing him on other teams, though, because I know that they probably both well, at least Gary Trent Jr. probably wanted to stay in Portland rather than go to a team that's likely not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the news I'm referring to is two buyouts. Marcus Aldridge is headed towards a buyout, and John Wall is headed to a buyout as well. So I thought the John Wall one was more interesting because his name wasn't being thrown around at all in trade rumors. To see him get bought out, I want to touch back quickly. Actually, we'll get to it when we get. Well, I'll talk about it when we get to that specific trade. So, what's next on the docket? What's the next trade we have?
Yeah, the next trade is not anything crazy. And we're not even going to really touch on it. I'll just say it. Matt Thomas goes to the Jazz. The Raptors get a future second-round pick. Nice. But this next trade
was literally, for you guys wondering quickly, that was literally allowing them to open an extra roster spot in case the Lowry trade went down and they had to take on extra players. That's all that was.
Yeah, and ultimately Lowry's staying put, so it doesn't really affect too much. But this next trade, this might have been the most surprising trade, I think, of the day, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers receiving Rajon Rondo and the Atlanta Hawks receiving Lou Williams. Again, he played there, I believe, in 2012, 2013. But, there have been rumors of Rondo going to the Clippers in the offseason, and he didn't, and now they trade to get him, but trade away, the multiple-time six-man of the year that pretty much helped build the culture in L.A. and said, if I get traded from L.A., I'm going to retire. I mean, do we believe that, and what are your thoughts on how the trade could help both teams?
I don't want to speculate retirement because that's just social media talk, but this is the actual trade. Rondo is somebody where you don't see his value in the regular season. You see it in the playoffs. Like, he closed for the Lakers last year in the playoffs. Rondo is one of the most intelligent players in the game. Draymond Green tweeted that was the best move anybody made all day. The Clippers get Rajon Rondo. He is super vital to a team. He takes the pressure off of Kawhi and PG to take all of the plays. So I like it in that aspect. Lou, as much as I love him, he can't defend. He just scores. So it's like the scoring is not an issue for the Clippers. It's somebody that can make plays, it's somebody that can defend. So I understand what the Clippers did. It just sucks that they gave up Lou Will to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for Lou Williams. He's one of my favorite players in the league today. So losing him, I know, and I bet he's going to feel a little bit betrayed because of how he probably felt the most at home with the Clippers of any team in his career. But getting Rondo definitely helps in the defensive end, which the Clippers have slipped a lot this year. They're kind of like an average defensive team, and I know Ibaka's been out, but when they get him back and when they have Rondo now out there, I think that'll help them out drastically on that end of the floor. It might hurt their shooting, but they're already the top-ranked three-point shooting team in the league, so they got enough there in that department. I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal. But yeah, I think it makes a little bit of sense for both teams. If I'm Lou Williams, I feel a little bit betrayed.
Yeah, but like I said, I do like the move of the Clippers.
Yeah, we had another trade. It was the Toronto Raptors receive a future second round pick, and the Sacramento Kings get Terrence Davis. Not really much there, but Terrence Davis was pretty good last year, so maybe he can re up his game again with the Kings this season. And now,
Same thing as well. Just opened up another spot in case of Lowry.
yeah, you're always on that part. But the next trade that we have involves J.J. Redick going to the Dallas Mavericks alongside Nikola Melli, and the Mavericks are sending James Johnson, Wesley Iwundu, and a second-round pick to New Orleans. What do you think of this trade?
I believe Redick's uninspiring. Didn't give up a whole lot to him. Only surrounded Luka with some shooters, so I like that move in itself. Kind of low risk for both teams. The like Pelicans knew they weren't going to resign Redick, so something for him. In terms of Dallas, surround Luka with some shooters. They still want to do things for Luka. So I like it for both.
Yeah, I think that it'll definitely help Dallas' shooting. They had Seth Curry last year. A lot of people were saying trading him might have been a mistake, but now I think getting J.J. Redick and Nikola Melli, it'll definitely help with that aspect out a little bit as well. Of course, another trade that we had, it doesn't really have full details yet, but Hornets are going to receive Brad Wanamaker, the Warriors. We don't really know what they're going to get, but, I mean, you can bet it's not going to be anything too league-changing. But we did have another trade of a specific player that is of high quality, and that is the Miami Heat. They're receiving Victor Oladipo for. I don't have the trade up. Do you have like the package or no?
Oladipo for Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, and a 2022 second round pick, I believe. So literally for pennies on the dollar. This is the point I wanted to make earlier. When the Rockets traded James Harden, they had the opportunity to take Caris LeVert. They decided to ship Caris LeVert to Indiana and take Victor Oladipo. Months later, they just flipped Victor Oladipo for Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, and a second round pick swap.
Yeah.
Like let's the Heat gave nothing to get Victor Oladipo. And they're all talking extensions. So you could say that he was going to sign no matter what. But they didn't give anything of value to get him. Like, Pat Riley finessed the Houston Rockets so much. There was no Duncan Robinson. There was no Hero. There wasn't even Kendrick Nunn, Precious Achiuwa. They give up absolutely nothing to get Victor Oladipo. I don't know how you can view the Rockets as winners. And I don't know how you can view the Heat as losers. I think it's a pretty clear one-side trade.
Yeah, I thought like at first when I saw that they were trading for him, I'm like, this might be like Carmelo Anthony in 2011 all over again, where you're trading, maybe Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero, and you're giving up like decent assets to get a player that he'll re-sign likely in the summer because he wants to be there, but you're hurting the sake of your team. Imagine back then in that trade if the Knicks still had like Gallinari and Wilson Chandler when they got Carmelo Anthony in the summer. So, I thought maybe it would have been that approach, but losing like Avery Bradley, who they even just gained in the offseason, following the season of them making the NBA Finals last year, and then Kelly Olynyk, who's been pretty bad, and then just a second round pick. So it's really not that much for a guy like Victor Oladipo, who, in a good situation could still be an all-star in the NBA. So, and he'll likely re-sign because he wants to be in Miami. And, I mean, that could make the Heat a serious team. Oladipo, Butler, Bam, I don't know, Dragic, like that's a pretty good team.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more that has to be said. It's not like, oh, this team may have one team may like. I think it's clear, just like that, winners.
Yeah, and I believe we have one more trade. It's not huge, but just a note, Golden State is trading Marquise Chris to the San Antonio Spurs. So he'll likely fill the void of LaMarcus Aldridge, who has officially now been bought out, and also, John Wall, who, like you said, they're talking about a buyout with him as well. So that's just some important things to note. But in terms of just like the players that didn't get traded, like Kyle Lowry, Lonzo Ball, John Collins. Were you surprised by any of that?
Lonzo maybe the most. Well, actually, Kyle Lowry. I'm sorry, Lowry. I thought was going to go. I thought that Lonzo was going to because I don't think the Pelicans are interested in signing him in the offseason, $20 million deal. Did we mention Daniel Tice got traded to the Bulls?
Yeah, we mentioned that when we talked about the Bo Vog
Okay.
pick. Yeah.
Sorry, there's so many trades that I'll make sure that
Yeah, I
that
tried
covered them
throwing that
all.
in there. But go ahead. Never mind.
So yeah, I think that's about all that I was thinking of. Woj is just saying the Heat are going to be the front runner to sign Aldridge in the buyout market. So I think that's interesting. You can think of something around a Butler, Oladipo, Bam are going to be your three closing guys regardless. Whether or not you want to play Dragic, you want to play Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, LaMarcus Aldridge, Kendrick Nunn, you have a lot of flexibility there. So I like that move. But go ahead. I'm just going to go through and make sure one last time on the trade front of nothing else.
Yeah, and the Heat, they turned stuff around a little bit ago in the season, but I believe they're on a 4-game losing streak, so they probably thought we need to do something right now. But for me, probably I think the Lonzo one might be the most surprising because there was so much rumors about that, and LeVar, it seemed like was still making his noise in the media, saying how it was a bad organization, all that stuff, and it seemed like the Bulls were going to trade for him. There were so many rumors, like you said, about around Markkanen, or maybe if they were to trade Kobe White to, make him the point guard and, get that good backcourt with Zach LaVine to add some defense there. But that one probably surprised me the most. I almost thought he was going to be on the Bulls by the end of the day. John Collins, it's a little bit of a weird one. Kyle Lowry, I did think he was going to get traded, but I'm surprised that he didn't. And then, of course, Andre Drummond didn't get traded, but he is going to be bought out by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and teams are going to be pursuing him as well. So, an eventful trade deadline, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I mentioned Lowry and Kobe were guys I thought were going to go. Once the Vooch news broke, I was almost certain Lowry was going to get traded. But super eventful, to say the very least. A trade deadline where it was action, so I'm really happy for that. A lot of times it's just maybe one big name that we're talking about all day. I mean, there were trades coming in all. You got all-stars being traded in Oladipo and Vooch, Aaron Gordon moving places, so a lot to talk about if we were able to do so.
Yeah, and Woj kind of lied to us, I think, a day or two ago, where he's like, it's not going to be a crazy deadline, but it was. I would say that it was. But to end off the show,
Absolutely.
We're going to do our daily picks on the 26th. We got the Grizzlies, Jazz. Some of these teams are going to have new faces, so what do you got on this one, though?
All right, let's run through these. I got Utah in the first game.
Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were going to list them all. I also have the Jazz. But yeah, so I guess we both have the Jazz. On the next one, we got Pistons, Wizards. Who you got here?
I got Washington.
I also got the Wizards. On the 28th, we got the Hawks, Nuggets. Who's going to win this one?
I got the Nuggets.
I'm going to go with the Hawks, actually. They've been playing pretty well lately outside their one loss to the Clippers. The Heat, Knicks, who's taking this one?
I like Miami.
I also think Miami. It could very well be Victor Oladipo's debut. We'll see. On the 30th, we have the Magic and Clippers. Who's winning this one?
The Clippers.
Yeah, it's the Clippers versus a G League team at this point. On the 31st, we have the Jazz, Grizzlies again, but this one is in Memphis, not Utah. Any difference or no?
Utah for me.
Yeah, I got Utah on the road as well. And then on the last day, we got the Hornets and the Nets. I feel like neither of these teams did anything too crazy today, but who do you got on this one?
I think Brad Wanamaker swings the needle. I'm going to go with the Nets.
I mean, you never know. Scary Terry might be rejuvenated by his addition. But no, I'm going to take the Nets as well. And I think our only difference was that Hawks-Nuggets game.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That'll be the decider of the week. But I think that's going to do it for us. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just once again looking through Twitter, but I don't see anything else big coming up. But very eventful day, one of our longer episodes because there's so much to talk about and digest. Thanks for following along, guys. Happy trade deadline day. Hope your team had a good day. Let us know below if you are a fan of your team's moves.
Yeah, and one team I will say I was surprised didn't make moves is the Kings. I mean, they were seems like they were going to be making a lot of moves from what we heard rumblings a few hours ago. So I was a little surprised that they didn't make any big moves, but who knows? Maybe they'll turn things around the second half of the year, and maybe these other teams with their additions can bolster throughout the rest of the season. Um, but yeah, I think that's gonna pretty much close out the show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.